Welcome, welcome, everyone. I'm Rabbi Deborah Lynn, and I want to welcome you all to Jewish Earth Alliance Network Monthly Meeting. We have a great agenda tonight. We have a great meeting tonight, great speakers, and I am really grateful that you're here tonight because I know it is a really busy and important week, Chol HaMoed of Pesach, and also Earth Week. And there are demonstrations going to be going on all over the nation this week. So I know that people are quite busy. I want to start by introducing our spiritual speaker tonight, Rabbi Ellen Bernstein, who most of you are very familiar with, is widely recognized as the pioneer thinker and activist who helped define modern Jewish environmentalism. In 1988, Rabbi Bernstein founded Shomrei Adamah, Keepers of the Earth, the first national Jewish environmental organization, in order to illuminate and make accessible the ecological roots of the Jewish tradition. She's a writer, a speaker, and a teacher, including her first book, which I read with great enthusiasm, Let the Earth Teach You Torah, and her latest creation, the Passover Haggadah, the Promise of the Land, that I know you all used at your Pesach Seder. I see Louise and Stuart, thumbs up, great. It's an honor to welcome Rabbi Ellen Bernstein to inspire our gathering tonight.
Great.
Ellen.
Thank you so much, Devorah. It's so nice to see people using the Haggadah. It just warms my heart.
Yeah.
Okay, so I just want to give you a little more tying together of this season with the Song of Songs and Passover and the land. So here we go. For several years, as a young adult, I worked as a river guide in Northern California. In those halcyon days of early spring, when the long rainy winter was over and the earth began to warm, my friends and I would drive to the foothills of the Sierras to greet the spring and begin to scout the rivers. The land was turning from parched brown to emerald green. Luxurious mats of moss and miners' letters studded with tightly furled fiddleheads stretched along the stream banks. The hills were covered with tiny bright yellow buttercups and scarlet paintbrush. The music of goldfinch, bank swallows, and mourning doves filled the air. In the evenings, my friend and I would gather around a campfire and share the poetry of our favorite nature writers. I remember someone reading aloud a short passage from what I was told was the biblical book of the Song of Songs. Though the Judaism of my childhood had never spoken to me, these words opened my heart. Rise up, my love, my fair one, and come away, for lo, the winter is past, the rain is over and gone, the flowers appear on the earth. The time of the singing of the birds is come, and the voice of the turtle is heard throughout the land. The fig trees put forth her green figs, and the vines with a tender grape give a good smell. Arise, my fair one, my love, and come away. This passage perfectly captured my own experience of the spring. Spring in the song was vibrant and immediate, offering itself up to be seen, smelled, eaten. Reading the song, I could feel the spring well up in my blood. I longed to get up and run away with her. Whatever divinity I knew seemed to be bound up in this bodily experience of spring, of color, smell, and sound, of this torrent of energy and this romance with the earth. That the song could articulate something I didn't have language for, that words from my own tradition could be so meaningful, comforted, and delighted me. I've always been interested in how literature can change us, how it can shape our awareness of the natural world and inspire a sense of responsibility for the earth. In my youth, I had filled myself with the words of the great nature writers. So at some point when I was teaching high school and my students were uninterested in the standard biology curriculum, I developed my own curriculum of great works of nature writing to try to capture their imagination. It worked. The students became hooked and their curiosity about the natural world blossomed. Years later, I found myself wondering about the ecological literature of my own ancestral tradition, which I had long since abandoned. What might the Hebrew Bible have to offer? My instinct told me that any tradition that had lasted 2,000 years must have an ecological vision. So I embarked on a decades-long journey. I ended up founding Shomrei Adamah, Keepers of the Earth, the first national Jewish environmental organization, and immersed myself into Judaism, and in particular to biblical literature. In the early days of the Jewish environmental movement, many of us scoured the Hebrew Bible and other Jewish texts looking for particular verses or ideas that appeared ecological. But a collection of random verses does not constitute a worldview. I always intuited there must be something more, an ecological through line. That the ancient Israelites had spent 40 years and most of the Bible trekking across a desert wilderness, living in tents, encountering God on mountaintops and by rivers, spoke to me of a way of life and a culture that was inextricably bound to the natural world and the land. I wondered if the language of land itself might lead me into a more comprehensive biblical ecology. After all, it was the land, the mountains, the rivers, the valleys, the forests that moved me. Ecologically speaking, land is a fundamental concept. Land is the community to which we belong. It is our habitat, and we are its inhabitants. It is an interdependent ecosystem of soils, waters, plants, and animals. Farmers have always known the value of land. The great agrarian author Wendell Berry famously wrote, "If you have no land, you have nothing. No food, no shelter, no warmth, no freedom, no life." Curious about the land's place in the Bible, I ran a quick word search and was surprised to find that the word land, actually two Hebrew words, Adamah and Eretz, appear more than 2,500 times. Yet because the Hebrew words are translated in a multitude of ways, from ground to soil to country to territory to terrain to land to earth, many people never even notice the constancy of the word land in the story. Furthermore, the very ubiquity of land in our text prevents us from actually seeing it the same way we easily lose sight of the ground or land upon which we walk. With more study, I began to understand the whole Torah, starting with the Garden of Eden, as a story of a people and a land. In the beginning, we Israelites were landless. Then God made a promise to Abraham and to Isaac after him and to Jacob and all the subsequent generations that we would inherit an Eretz, a land that we could call home. That the Hebrew word Eretz means not just land, but also earth, conveys a profound ecological sense. The land or earth is home of the swimming creatures, the flying creatures, the walking, climbing, crawling, hopping, and sprinting creatures, and us. The land, the earth, is our habitat, and we are its inhabitants. Land or earth is the most precious blessing a people can receive. It is the source of sustenance, the promise of life, the promise of freedom. But before we could get to any land of promise, we had to endure 400 years enslaved in Pharaoh's land. For Pharaoh, land had no inherent value. It was just a commodity that he could manipulate to his own advantage. He owned and exploited the land and everyone in it. Relying on the Israelite slaves to build his storage cities to house the land's produce, Pharaoh amassed more and more wealth in the form of grain. Yet living so long in this culture of exploitation, our Israelite enslaved ancestors would lose sight of the meaning, the deep value of land. If God were to give our people a land, we would need to recognize the land's incomparable value. God took us to the wilderness for 40 years to teach us that land, the earth, was not a thing. It was not ours to own, and it was not guaranteed. Land, people, and God were imperceptibly bound in a three-way covenant relationship, knit together as one. The proper relationship with the land was a reciprocal one. The more we give and care for the land, the better the land can take care of us. Moreover, the land does not belong to us. We belong to the land. Of course, honoring the value of land does not come so naturally for many of us. It can be hard to imagine that something so lowly, so inconspicuous and ordinary as land or soil could have so much value. Today, many people associate land and soil with dirt, something to rid ourselves of, never recognizing it as the ground of our being. On the other hand, many associate the word land in a Jewish context with the land of Israel only, and are unable to recognize the land more universally as any land, as earth. Embracing the larger ecological meaning of Eretz as a living, generative being requires that we re-educate ourselves, rewiring, perhaps rewilding our brains and hearts. By engaging more deeply with land, gardening, restoring landscapes, hiking, birding, any outdoor activities, by educating ourselves and exposing ourselves to programs like these, and by slowing down and just paying attention to the living world all around us, these are all important steps in cultivating a more landed Jewish ecological consciousness that can motivate and sustain us along the long road of helping ensure the future of a healthy earth. Thanks.
Amen. Thank you so much, Ellen. It really is a poignant about the Jewish condition of the wandering Jew, the Jew that is dispossessed of land and also citified, very city, urban oriented. Thank you very much for that description and narrative from your life. So, as I said before, we've got lots of things going on all over the nation. I'm wondering if anybody would like to share with us what's going on in their neighborhood. In Washington, we're having a big demonstration tomorrow at Chase Bank, I think at Chase Bank, and then Saturday at the White House, praying with our feet. And would anybody like to share what's going on in their neighborhood for this week, for this Earth Week?
In Los Angeles, we're doing the same as part of the Dayenu, as part of our Dayenu circle. Also praying with our feet in front of where we're going to be at a spot where there's going to be Chase, Wells Fargo, and Bank of America all in one area. So it should be really interesting action. We're hoping to get, hopefully about 100 people out. So it should make a good statement.
What day is that?
That's going to be tomorrow.
The same as ours, yeah.
Yeah, tomorrow in the afternoon.
All right, we'll text with each other.
Yes, send pictures.
Anybody else? A different part? Louise?
There's actually one going on right now in San Francisco, outside of another one, that we've got to be protesting. There's just so many, Bill McKibben has been pushing, as you probably have all been following, his 4 banks and it's BlackRock is the one in San Francisco that is being protested.
Terrific. Mark, I hear you've got something going.
In Evanston tomorrow, there's going to be a Dayenu circle also in front of Chase Bank, but at Beth Emet Synagogue on Friday night, our state senator, Laura Fine, who's been invested in the climate change movement for a long time, I was able to get her to come and give a talk. We're calling it a Devar Torah. She's Jewish, and it's possible it could be, but maybe it's going to just be a speech that she gives. However, the topic is going to be the intersection between mental health and climate change, which should be very interesting.
Yes, very. Oh, I'm so glad we got somebody from the middle of the country. That's great. We've got both coasts in the middle of the country. How about Pennsylvania? Has Pennsylvania got some plans? Phyllis, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, Pennsylvania has big plans. Tomorrow they're doing a street seder at the Chase Bank in Malvern, Pennsylvania. and Rabbi Waskala is leading that. All this week, Earthquake has been walking from Chester, Pennsylvania, which is one of the poor, most polluted places, lots of industries down there, lots of very polluted river and things of this nature, to Vanguard. So every day they've been walking 10 miles or so, and Friday they're doing what they're billing as you could get arrested, an arrestability event demonstration at the Vanguard headquarters, which is right outside of Philadelphia in Malvern, Pennsylvania, and all are welcome. The rally tomorrow, I think, is at 3:30, and I'm not quite sure about what's happening with the time on Friday, but I'd be happy to get back to people if they're interested. My email is phyllis2723@gmail.com, where you can just look at Dayenu and find all what's going on nationally. There's 21 actually taking place this week.
Thanks. That's great. That's great. Oh, I see. That's the Earthquakers. That's great. What a great name for them. Anybody else? One more? All right, then. Let me introduce our speaker for tonight. After a career in Farmington, New Mexico in risk management services for the oil and gas industry as an insider, Don Schreiber and his wife retired to Northwest New Mexico in 1999 to start a small cattle ranch called the Devil's Spring Ranch, which I find lovingly ironic name, using non-traditional sustainable agricultural practices. However, living daily with oil and gas development and production in the San Juan Basin, they have 99 wells they could not control on their ranch, and he will explain why. It convinced them after several years that they could make a bigger contribution to the environment and the future of the ranch by trying to hold the industry accountable for environmental and economic impacts. In 2008, they established the Open Space Pilot Project, resulting after 12 years of perseverance in reducing the drilling of single wells by over 50%. Mr. Schreiber has been expanding his work to state and federal activism, including advocacy for the Environmental Defense Fund, the Sierra Club, and the San Juan Citizens Alliance, and is a founding board member of the Western Leaders Network, giving testimony on methane waste before state commissions and the Federal House Natural Resources Committee in 2019 and again in 21. Recent strong protections from leaking wells just passed last week by the state of New Mexico can set a wonderful example for national EPA rules. You can continue to follow Don Schreiber's work as Methane Madman on Twitter. And as his self-description states, he is a citizen rancher, all things natural, democratic, he made up that word, political, environmental, liberal, and don't let the hat fool you. Don, please, let us hear your story and the work that you are doing.
Well, I want to say it's thrilling to be here. I'm going to have to go back and forth between my screen and the camera up here because I want to look at all of you. But I would just like to say thank you so much, and to Lisa, Louise, Mark, Phyllis, that work you're reporting from coast to coast and through the center of the country is everything that we could hope for to here in New Mexico. As the acceptance of our own responsibility for the environment, as Rabbi Ellen said, it's up to us to take responsibility, and what a privilege it is to be on with her and her pioneering work today. So I was talking with Deborah before, and we were kind of interested in how the West came to be, how there came to be 99 wells, now 122 on our ranch and federal grazing area. And I put up some links, and Marilla has done that. I'm sorry, she's put them up for me. And I hope that you'll look at them to understand the dominance of industry over our land through the 1872 Mining Act, when it started to begin to control the minerals in favor of industry. And we can all educate ourselves. And the terrible part of that story is the 1872 Mining Act is still very much alive and has been defended successfully by industry all these years. There are many wonderful actions to try to reverse that terrible antiquated law that is still destroying our environment. We're very partial to Earthworks, the national organization that was actually founded by our friend Gwen Lacko here in nearby Durango, Colorado, and now is a national organization. So look at that link. You can also look, I've included a link by the San Juan Citizens Alliance to talk about the split estate, which is common and unfortunately not just in the West. So I know Phyllis will say that it happens in Pennsylvania and other states as well, but that is where the minerals have been severed from the land. And I think that's a very graphic word and correct under various congressional actions, certainly in the 1926 Mineral Severance Act, the federal government claimed all of the minerals if they weren't already claimed. And then as a corporation, as a business, then you became, the federal government became your customer, so that individuals lost further control. And the split estate refers to fluid minerals such as oil and gas. Gas in the government's estimation is a fluid. So that we lost that fight at the start. Does that make us quit fighting? No, I hope we're all a testament to that, that we keep fighting and trying to claw that back. And indeed, over the years, many improvements have been made. It's just that for the richest, most destructive industry on the face of the earth, for the history of the earth, the oil and gas companies, the fossil fuel companies have just a heck of a head start and make it difficult. However, I hope we can see from what Jane and I have done here is just actually a couple of retired people. My wife, Jane, fourth grade teacher. I was in the risk management business and had a business, but we retired. And I'll talk about that in just a minute, but hopefully you all feel, and I think there's proof that you do, that you can make a difference in holding these industries accountable. I want to say that there is a video embedded that's you'll have to dig for it a little bit, and I can get back with Deborah and try to get a better link for that video on Split Estate. But there's a documentary called Split Estate, narrated by Ali McGraw, as a matter of fact, made, I think, in 2008. So talking about the instance of why, when I step outside, if I could turn my camera around and say there are 33 wells within a mile of our home here, many much closer than that. And that I don't have Jane, my children, my heirs and grandchildren don't have the ability to stop those wells from being drilled. And we have limited ability to have basically any say about them because, as Deborah and I discussed, the result of these original laws, actions by the federal government and by the courts was to sever the mineral estate, meaning that's everything below the ground, from the surface estate, meaning everything above the ground, and then to assert and uphold to this day that the mineral estate is superior to the surface estate. And that is no other way to look at that, is that just a tremendous benefit to industry. I think the intentions, if we can sign any good intentions, was to populate the West and through the Homestead Act and other actions like this to get industry to come out here to build a railroad, and they didn't want to show up at some farmer's place and say they couldn't go ahead. But that as we know now, was actually a pathway to perhaps destroying the earth, perhaps putting us in the reason that I can't step outside and show you this beautiful land that we live in today, but it is so unseasonably windy and warm, not what it should be here at 6,500 feet on the Devil Springs Ranch. We should not have that. And we feel clearly, and the scientific evidence shows what I think you all believe, and that is that in the anthropogenic era in where we are, we've changed this whole world in the last 100 years through the use of fossil fuels, and that continues today. So I lost my stopwatch, Rabbi. You're supposed to be being my timekeeper. You said you would keep me in the right direction.
No, that's right, I did. So, but it's just so fascinating. I was saying to you that some people are used to this kind of split estate because I believe Israel, the people buy houses and the land is on lease. Is that right? Does anybody, or there are places where it's separate like that you never own the land, but you don't get any pay for the oil that comes out, right? You don't get any.
No.
That's unbelievable. I
mean, we get the fuzzy end of that lollipop. We get all the destruction and eruption and so forth. We can fight for a little bit of surface damage.
Yes.
Recompense, but it's just kind of token payments because the wells are here forever. Their lives will be they're projected to be 30 years, but we have wells on our ranch that have been running for 50 years since they were drilled, and they're still there and are still going. So, and in a brittle environment like this, I'm going to go on start my stopwatch and go on to the second part and to say, how did we get here? Why am I sitting here talking to you today? And I included some things in the outline that I sent, and Marilla has that, and I think that may be included in your site. But I would like to just say that when we retired, we did not set out to be oil and gas activists. We were looking to get back. We're kind of horse people. Our grandparents on both sides had been stockmen, not immediately in our family, but a generation back, and we were very interested in that. And one of the basic underlying goals that we thought we would try to have guide our life was something that is predominant in the Navajo culture here, which is far and away the largest culture here in the Four Corners area. That's where New Mexico, Colorado, Utah, and Arizona all come together. So here in the Four Corners region, which is also where this big gas field lies, there is a concept called hose row. And as Ellen was talking about land and about the commitment to the land and the how it flows through your religion, I just want to read this little part of a definition of Navajo hose row, and something that had kind of inspired Jane and I to maybe seek different careers in our second careers, and that it is a philosophical, religious, and aesthetic term, hose row, Hozho, from the Navajo language, and it means seeking and incorporating aesthetic qualities into life. It means inner life and harmony. It means making the most of all that surrounds us. It refers to a positive, beautiful, harmonious, happy environment that must be constantly created by thought and deed. Hozro encourages us to go in beauty and to enjoy the gifts of life and nature and health. So I found that somewhat parallel to what Ellen was talking about. And so we kind of began in that spirit, and that led us to one of the pioneers of holistic management, that's with an H, who came from South Africa, Alan Savory, to try to replicate the beneficial aspects of grazing animals. Now that's a controversial still to this day, but in the African grasslands where he grew up and became a biologist, he could see that the grazing animals lived in harmony with the land. And if they were left alone and could not be hunted and not be harassed by development and their environment not taken away, then they live in a positive cycle with the land, and that where the animals were, the grasses grew. And you can replicate that to a degree through holistic management. Now, it's totally artificial because, my gosh, like I say, we've got 33 wells within a mile of our home. So, but that's what we came to do, was to use grazing animals to try to improve a land that had been very, very heavily impacted by overgrazing decades ago, by sheep. Not the sheep's fault, but not sustainable grazing practices, and then terribly for the last 100 years impacted by oil and gas and all the destruction that causes, not just what we know now about the methane that goes up in the air and the other chemicals that impact us, but also the surface and the water flows and how it impacts everything, all of the land. So that holistic management got us there, what we were wanting to do. But as Ellen has said, then we were kind of overrun by oil and gas development, which was very strong in the early 2000s. And it was pretty quickly that we realized we better shift our focus to trying to stop that environmental damage. And so that's what we've been doing.
Did you get rid of the herds? Did you, or you said?
Yes, very sadly, we cut back, but the truth of the matter was, as we hung on for dear life for many years, but I was traveling to Washington, D.C. and to Santa Fe, which is the capital here, and other places in the country all the time. And Jane was trying to run the ranch, and we were combined with our neighbor, who was actually a very, very large ranching operation. And the burden on her was just tremendous. And we just could not live a divided life. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute. I think I'm going to stop my stopwatch there and go on to the last thing that you had talked about, Ellen, that people might like to hear about. And that is, having done that and shifted those gears, what are the effective actions? What are things that we thought we did that were effective? And I want to say to everyone, because I'm inspired by what you all do, and I watched your entire broadcast last time, and that is that where we got to today, I did something that is kind of scary, and that is I just Googled myself plus the word methane, and 55,000 hits on that. So that right away, when we began resisting, we began getting publicity and people were writing about it, and we were becoming engaged at every level, the local, with our neighbors, with our family, with our local environmental organizations, and then on to national environmental and international environmental organizations. So that I want to say to you all that you have every opportunity to do the same thing. So how could you feel like you're making a difference? Well, you already are. You're here. You've got your activities going on tomorrow, and I know you're living your lives that way. But it is a little bit of personal commitment that drives success, I believe. So that and this is the hard part for me to say, and that is that we gave up our dream of being the ranchers that we had learned to become, that so many people had helped us with. And what our original idea was to improve this land, the rangeland, through grazing and careful management, and try to bring back and give something back to this land. We had to give that up eventually and commit personally, fully, to continuing this struggle to hold fossil fuel companies accountable in every way that we can. And we still run a ranch. We still do lease our land out for other cattle to be on it. under our guidance, and we do a lot of infrastructure work, such as water wells and other programs to improve the land. But we had to give up our retirement dream and dedicate ourselves to this.
James Blasiak is asking, have you measured the methane emissions at each of the wells or as a whole? I know that you have.
Yeah, James, thank you for that question. Methane is difficult to measure when it's fugitive. In other words, it's just been released either by a leak or primarily by vents, James. The oil and gas industry actually vents most of the methane that goes out is vented on purpose. It's part of the process. They like to say, well, we're working on our leaks, but the leaks are you kind of think of your leak as being something under the sink that you could get under there with a wrench and some Teflon tape and fix it, like it's dripping, like it's not a big thing. And that's not true. But there's EDF, the Environmental Defense Fund, and other scientific organizations, and the EPA also measure leaks and methane emissions, and you can see that. And unfortunately, it's increasing, even though these methods are coming, and laws and regulations are coming to control it. Public outcry, of course, as well. But it's very with the additional drilling, they just leak. The key is to shut those wells down and to change to a renewable energy source as fast as we can. So we use a FLIR camera, James, if you've heard of that. That's forward-looking infrared, officially now referred to as optical gas imaging. So we have that very often. We're very lucky here on the ranch to get those cameras to come in here through the big earthworks environmental organization. They own two. They're about $100,000 a piece, and you have to become a certified thermographer to run them, and they require a lot of maintenance. So it's difficult for people to do it. We measure it in the old-fashioned way, AVO, which is audio, visual, and olfactory, so we can see it, hear it, and smell it. So we know that way. It's hard to quantify it when you're on the ground, though. Good question. And
there's a satellite now that's tracking.
There are many satellites that track it, and there are other technology. I hesitate to say this, but if we're going to get saved here, it's going to be by technology, because regulators are completely outgunned by industry, by the reductions that happened to government at the highest levels, beginning in the Reagan administration, cutting back the EPA and the Bureau of Land Management, Department of Interior, right down to all the state levels. So they need those technological tools, and sometimes they can really work and make a huge difference. And that's what's happening now. That's our big bright spot.
So I mentioned the new regulations that New Mexico has passed that could be a model for the country. Can you expand on that? Can you?
Well, I hope everyone will take away that it's your collective effort that makes a difference. And environmental organizations, international, state, local, and just dedicated people like myself joined in about a 4-year project to get these laws changed. And part of that is political activism, where we were very active, try to get Democratic candidates elected so that we could have someone to appeal to. We had 8 years of a Republican administration here, or maybe if we're not to put labels, then I will say an anti-conservation administration for 8 years that made things terrible here in New Mexico. So changing those regulations, most of the wells were entirely unregulated. We had an old Oil and Gas Act here that was passed in 1936 and had barely been updated. The maximum an oil company could be fined was $1,000 for anything. So that's all changed dramatically. We were just instrumental on getting one of the larger producers here around us fined $1.62 million That's Hillcore, one of the largest methane producers in the United States. Unfortunately, they're here in New Mexico, but we got them fined $1.62 million for failure to do their business properly. And those fines are coming like crazy. And that was just since 2018 when we got a pro-conservation government in here. And they're the Secretary of the Environment, the Secretary of the Oil and Gas, of the Energy Minerals Department here in New Mexico went to work right away to try to change and improve those regulations. So it's a big effort. That's how we did it.
So fining is a big, making it not pay is a major provision.
It is. It's not enough. Because oil companies have all the money in the world, so they,
All right, what do you think would be
they
enough?
act like they don't like it, but they've got all the money in the world. What we need them to do is change their behavior, and fines help do that. But other things do too, such as stopping their drilling permits or suspending them until the problems are fixed, rather than just issuing a fine. Because in many cases, they're willing to pay the fine because the business of oil and gas drilling and production is so insanely profitable that the fines can be considered a cost of doing business, and they're willing to do it. We want to change their behavior.
Let me see if we have a couple questions.
Sure.
James was also, well, he wanted to possibly talk to you offline. There's an argument about top-down measurements versus bottom-up measurements. Are you familiar with that?
Well, I'm not sure what his terminology is, but I'm sure that you have put out my email address, I hope.
Yeah.
Should I put that in the chat, or will you do that for me so James or anyone can get a hold of me, and I'd be very happy to talk to them offline because we're limited here.
Right. Yeah, Mirala is saying it can be profitable even when it's unprofitable because of all the subsidies. You know, we're working
That's
on.
right. $4 billion to the richest industry in the history of the world doesn't make a lot of sense.
No.
So that's exactly right. And they remain profitable almost all the time.
Yeah. Ellen, do you have a question?
Yeah, I just curious as to what it's like to live on property with oil wells, and like if you knew at all what you were getting into when you moved there.
Well, thank you for that question. We live with gas wells, so methane wells predominantly, as opposed to oil. But this is true for fields are specifically, mainly oil, such as in the southern part of New Mexico and the Permian Basin, shared with Texas there, and that's the largest oil producing region, perhaps in the world right now, certainly in the United States, and all the problems that they have. We're here in the San Juan Basin, the northwest corner of New Mexico. That's predominantly gas. So even with my oil and gas background, and I thought I understood how many wells could be on a piece of ground, whether it was federal or what. But when we moved out here, we were in for a rude awakening. We also had an assumption that I think is very fair, and that is that we expected that the BLM, the stewards of the land, the predominant amount of land, and the EPA and the state, we assumed that they had done their jobs. We didn't live out here before. We lived in town and lived. Very sorry. That's my daughter-in-law because I'm having my grandson come. And
We've all had this happen.
I can't figure out how to turn that thing off. Oh, I see. It came through to my computer because we were hooked up here. Sorry. So 4-year-old coming for 4 days starting tomorrow. So his mom wants to talk to me. So we had every assumption and expectation that the company, the federal agencies and state agencies were doing their jobs. We expected that they were regulated correctly. We did not know that they had allowed oil companies and to get away with very terrible environmental practices before. And we weren't schooled environmentalists. We didn't know how to recognize that. I counted the number of wells. I thought they were through drilling in this area and thought that that was the end of it, and that we could live with what was here when we moved here. So to answer your question, we did know what was here, but we had an expectation that the regulators were doing their jobs. And it was only later that we found out, one, the regulators for 100 years hadn't been doing their jobs, and two, that we did not understand how the wells were really impacting the environment to such a great degree. And then three, we came in the late 90s, and the surface damage was something, like I said, we thought we recognized and we could attack. And that's how we started and had some great success. But by the 2008 or so, 9, the FLIR camera was becoming available and readily so. So there's a link in that I hope you guys can see, where we did a show for PBS. Gwen Eiffel was the host for the PBS NewsHour, where we put a FLIR camera out here showing this methane's invisible. So it was just shocking to see what was coming out. And it comes with many other harmful, toxic gases as well. It doesn't ever come out just by itself. So I hope that answers your question, Ellen.
Let me, Judy Burlfine, do you have a question?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for sharing all of this. Can you tell us more specifically what kind of actions you're doing and involved in? You said you go to DC. So is this all, I don't have a feel for how you're working on it more specifically.
Thank you, Judy. I don't know, I'm going to steal, I think it was James's top down or bottom up question. And that was, we're very, very bottom up. So what we do is engage with the oil companies, with the regulators right here on our land, because we're here. That's not possible for everyone because they don't live with the oil and gas wells. But that's what we do. When we take action, we're talking about taking action right there that day on our land, confronting the oil companies, demanding answers, asking the regulators, state and federal, why they're not fixing that, or why the oil companies are allowed to do it. And taking that engagement, and we take that engagement, which is how we absolutely started, just, hey, why are you having a road that only your giant trucks can drive down? We can't even get down it, and it's on our own land. How can that be possible? Why are you allowed to fill up the cattle guard so the cattle can just walk in and out and not clean them with your traffic? Or why are you destroying these trees or our watershed, or those basic first elements? We take those first actions and we still do that. What is happening to us? And then we move that up as far as we can move it, Judy, by every means we can. So we engage with other people who have the same experience. We talk to our representatives. We talk to our, if it's possible to help our county. And we did that extensively, working at the county level, onto the state and onto the federal government. So that when I said earlier, we're engaged politically, we make that contribution of our time and donations to political candidates to try to help them get elected and them get to know us, so that we can go back and talk to them and they'll understand our problems. So that's what we're always doing, and moving that up. And as we do, we engage everything we can to amplify our voice. So that's through newsletters and organizations somewhat like yours that would broadcast it, just as we're doing now.
That's right. So thank you so much. That's so helpful. And I just have a follow-up question, because my husband read the attached article and he said, oh, it sounded like it was really bad under Trump. I wonder if it's improved. So have you seen any improvements at all, or since Trump left office? You have hope.
I have every hope. All men must live thus. I think that's Shakespeare. And the change was dramatic between the Trump administration and the Biden administration. And I'll just say as an example, Deborah Holland, who's a Native American from New Mexico, was our Democratic Party chairman here, and one of those people we worked with and counted as a friend for so long. And she ran for Congress here and was elected, and we were big supporters of hers. And then when Biden was elected, he reached down and chose Deb Haaland, Native American, to be the Secretary of the Interior. I know not everybody knows that but we're so hugely proud of that in New Mexico, that our friend and our daughter of New Mexico is now the head of the Department of the Interior, and the BLM comes under them, and so many things that impact us. So in terms of change of direction, emphasis, intention, all of that, it's night and day. It's huge. Does it move a 600,000 employee organization or, like that rapidly? No. And the oil companies resist what we do, but I have every reason to be hopeful. I'm so supportive of the president and his policies. And we did the same thing with the governor here. After 8 years of anti-conservation governor, we have a new governor as of 2018, and we only have these rule changes because of her initiative. Her third executive order was to start a climate initiative here in New Mexico and assign the responsibility to the oil and gas companies. Does the Biden administration always do what we want, or the Lujan Grisham administration here in the state always do what we want with regard to energy? No, they don't. The oil and gas influence is huge and still very unduly, influential. But it's wonderful for us, night and day. Be hopeful.
Right.
Work hard.
Yeah. Well, we're in the same playing field, amplifying the voice. So I want to thank you so much, Don, for your story and the excitement you generate from out west as a rancher. And keep up the good work, keep the faith, and keep up the good work. So thank you so much for coming. I want to turn it's not the floor, it's these windows, right? I want to turn the window over to Mirala, who is going to talk about our action alert. And go right ahead, Mirala.
Good evening. Thank you, Devorah. Thank you, Ellen. And Don, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. Right now, for Jewish Earth Alliance, we're focusing on 3 priority issues, and methane is one of them. And we have been working on that. Devorah and I testified on the federal proposed new federal regulations on methane emissions. And we also, many of you have, I know, written to your legislators on methane, and we expect to be working on that more as that process of those regulations becoming finalized moves on. So we really appreciate having that firsthand view, Don, from you. Right now, we're in a very exciting time on one of the other priorities that we're working on, which is the Recovering America's Wildlife Act. Who's heard of that before? Raise your hand. Okay, well, if you haven't heard about it, go to our website and read our action alert about it. This is a very exciting bill that is going to send money to all of the states to implement their plans for protecting wildlife that's at risk of extinction. It turns out every state has a plan, but they have no money to actually implement it. This bill is about protecting wildlife, but it's very much about climate change, because that's one of the major risk factors affecting the wildlife. And a lot of the money is going to go to protecting habitat. And habitat, that means it's going to also protect human communities from the effects of climate change. So we're very enthusiastic about this bill, especially because it's bipartisan, believe it or not. And it has a really good chance of passing if we all lend our activism and our voices to the big movement that is supporting it. The bill just passed the markup in the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee. And that means that it's now ready to go to the floor in both the House and the Senate. And the activists and coalition that we're working with tell us that they want to bring it for a vote on the floor of the House and the Senate before Memorial Day. So that's really soon. But they think they can do it. And what they've been telling us is keep up the drumbeat for this bill. And we can keep up the drumbeat by doing a couple things, calling our legislators and telling them to pressure their leadership. Talk to your leadership to bring this bill to a vote on the floor, because if there doesn't come to the floor, people can't vote for it. Ask your legislators in the House and the Senate to co-sponsor the bill, because when they co-sponsor it, it shows there's enough support and the leadership will want to bring it to the floor for a vote, because they don't want to bring up a bill that's not going to pass. We can also get on social media and, tag your legislators. And if anyone doesn't know how to do that, I finally learned, and I'll be happy to give you a lesson. One of the things that we've been doing, a couple of our groups have done photo petitions. I'm just dying to show this to you. Photo petitions, which you take pictures of people and then you can post them on social media or send them to your legislators. So I just have to show you this picture because it's so cute. See that?
Not yet. There we go.
You see it? See
Yeah.
the photos? So we made these signs. We gave people stuffed animals, and everyone was very happy to have their photos taken for this effort to contact our legislators and get their attention. So I recommend that to you. And as a matter of fact, I thought we could just take action now very quickly before we finish our meeting with the counting of the Omer. If everyone would turn on their video for a minute, I'm going to hold up this sign, and then we're going to do a photo of everybody. Okay, so Mark, Paul, David, Robert, James, Julie, Sheila, can you all turn on your videos? So people
I wish you told me. I would have brought my stuffed animal from the other room.
I just thought of it while we were getting.
Yeah.
I always have my best idea when we're already on the call. Jim, can you turn on your video?
And Robert and David.
David, Robert.
Oh, we get an animal.
Oh, good. There you go.
And he's right in the middle.
Let's see. Do I have anything in here? No.
Okay, are you all ready?
Yeah.
Everybody smile. Wait, Judy, get back to your chair.
And Don's got his hat.
Okay, and I'm taking one, but Judy, will you do me a favor and also take one? Do print screen. Do you know how to do it? No. Okay, never mind.
I don't know how to do it. Someone else.
I'm doing it. All right, everyone smile. Okay, done. All right, now, so please work on the Recovering America's Wildlife Act. I also want to tell you that we have a very, very special guest. I mean, today's guests were very, very special, but we have an also very, very special guest for next month's meeting. For our May meeting, we are going to be hosting a congressman. Representative Andy Levin from Michigan has agreed to speak at our meeting. He is not only a member of Congress, he is a renewable energy entrepreneur and has a lot of really exciting things to share with us. So I just want to let you know about that now. And I'm putting the link to register for the meeting into the chat. At least I think I am. And please spread the word. So we have a nice turnout for Representative Levin. He's really exciting. I heard him speak and I just thought we had to have him. And I asked him and he said yes. So there you go. You never know.
Great.
So now I believe we're going to finish the meeting with counting the Omer. Is that right, Devorah?
Yeah, that's right. I wanted to say that Los Angeles, congratulations to Los Angeles. They just built a bridge across the 101. They just finished a bridge for wildlife. And it's about as wide as the Route 101. And it's because one cougar somehow got across the highway and ended up in Griffith Park. And Carol is shaking her head. So I've got the story at least halfway straight. One cougar made it to Griffith Park, and it was such big news because they couldn't believe he got across the 101. And so they built a bridge for wildlife. So I think that's a fantastic success story there. So please, Mirala, will you count the Omer? We need to explain it perhaps to Don, that between Passover and Pentecost, Shavuot, is 40 days, and we count them because we are counting our days and discerning what we are going to do with them.
Okay, did anyone else take the picture when I took it? Because I realized I screwed up. I did print screen and then I copied the link for the registration. So we have to do it again one more time, okay? Put on your video.
Fred, can you bring me Blue Bear?
Put on your video again one more time. I screwed it up. Ready? Get set. Smile. Okay, that time I'm going to do it right now.
Okay.
Anyone wants to learn how to do that? That would be a big help to the rest of us. Let's see. Okay. You can't be the tech person and the other person too. Oh, that worked perfectly. Okay. Here we are. Here's what I wanted to say about the Omer. Okay, when our ancestors counted the days, the 49 days from Pesach to Shavuot, their minds were on the harvest and survival. Many things have changed since Jews began to count the Omer in ancient times, but not the reality, which we heard from Ellen already today, that life depends on the land, on a good harvest. And climate change, of course, is causing dangerous weather that makes farming unpredictable. And today, as we count the Omer, as our ancestors did, let's remember that we too depend on a good harvest and commit to take even more action for a safe and reliable climate. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al sfirat haomer. Blessed are you, Eternal, who has made us holy with your mitzvot and commanded us concerning the counting of the Omer. Hayom arba'a yamim la'omer. Today is the 4th day of the Omer.
Amen.
Moadim l'simcha.
Moadim l'simcha.
Enjoy the rest of the holiday.
And let me leave you with a blessing for social action. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shenatan lanu hizdamnut litaken et haolam. Blessed are you with a capital Y, and you all social activists for giving us and God for giving us this opportunity to mend the world. Amen to you all. Go and keep being active, and we'll see you next month.